Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me in the back? Yes? Can I get a thumbs up if you can hear me in the back? Awesome. Okay, I love an attentive crowd. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Ways to Go the Extra Mile Guide Running with Achilles International. We are so glad to have you here on site. We're so glad to have you here on site at our run center with a full house. There's folks picking up bibs for our doubleheader weekend, so there will be chatter on the side, but we'll try to be loud so you can hear us appropriately. So available tonight, just some logistical information. There's assisted listening system available. If you did not request one but need to use one, please see my colleague Mark Guillaume, who is waving his hand right there in the audience, and he can assist you with one. We have accessible restrooms available right behind us around the corner. We have our wonderful American Sign Language interpreter, Rose, here on the side. And thank you, Rose. And we will have closed captioning, which will be provided in the recording available on our New York Roadrunners YouTube page. So you can check that out at a later time. So for tonight, this panel is for Achilles International. What is Achilles International? I'm sure many of you already know, but we are thrilled to have Achilles International here with us tonight. We have athletes and leaders from the organization with us. Achilles International is a leading adaptive running nonprofit celebrating 40 years of breaking down barriers to the start line for athletes with disabilities. With over 62 chapters in parks around the world, the organization transforms the lives of youth, adults, and veterans with disabilities. So you're probably wondering who I am and why I am talking continuously. My name is Saman Wakad. I am the Diversity, Equity, and Social Responsibility Specialist at New York Roadrunners. And for those with low vision or who might be blind, here in the audience or watching this recording at a later time, I am a South Asian female. I am wearing a fleece with the New York Roadrunners and New Balance logos on the front and a scarf wrapped around my head. I am also wearing glasses. So moving on to the panelists for the evening. First and foremost, to my left, we have Francesco Magisano. I think he said I pronounced that wrong. Francesco is an elite para-triathlete, also the director of Achilles NYC Metro Region.
What's up, everybody? Short description. So for those that don't know, I am totally blind, and I am 6'6", dashingly handsome for those who can't see. I'm wearing a bright yellow Achilles shirt, and I am happy to be here.
Thank you for that wonderful description, Francesco. Also, Francesco's here to pull my leg. I just want to let you all know. To Francesco's left, we have Wesley DeMauro. Wesley is a close friend of Francesco. That may or may not be true. Wesley is an Army veteran and longtime Achilles guide.
Yes. So Wesley DeMauro. Woo-hoo-hoo. I got a bigger cheer than you. Visual description, I'm wearing a very, very bright yellow shirt that says Achilles Guide on it. I am 5'10", brown hair, hazel eyes. Tell your friends, wink.
He's 5'10" on a good day.
Thank you, Wesley. And as you can see, I think they are friends, actually. To Wesley's left, we have Sarah Heller. Sarah is... I can see Sarah is a crowd favorite because Sarah is an Achilles Spirit awardee and longtime NYC athlete.
Thank you. Well, you know, I guess I'm 5'3", and I smile a lot, and I sing, and I'm very pretty. And then, thank you.
All descriptions going forward should be done exactly like this. And last but not least for our panelists, to Sarah's left, we have Terrell Schmidt. Terrell is the U.S. Chief Marketing Officer and Head of Brand Transformation at TD Bank, presenting sponsor of the Achilles Hope and Possibility 4 Miler, which I'm sure everyone here knows is taking place this Sunday, 8:15 a.m. in Central Park.
Awesome.
I can confirm that Sarah is indeed very pretty. So I am Terrell Schmidt, and I am 5'3" on a really good day, and I'm shrinking. I have blonde hair. I'm in a Hope and Possibility presented by TD shirt from 2019, the first year that we sponsored. And I have been asked by my team, because TD wears green everywhere, to wear green, so I have green shoes.
Green Prada shoes, just so everyone knows.
Oh.
And I think I win an award because I'm 5 feet tall, so I'm the shortest. I have to win some sort of award, I'm sure. So, folks, we're going to keep this conversational tonight. We're going to find out what stories our guides and our runners have and get you excited for becoming a guide if you are not one already, whether you're here in person or you're watching this later online. So, Francesco, let's begin with you. Tell us, when did you start running? What was your first guide runner experience?
So I found Achilles in 2017. Before then, I had never run a mile in my life except chasing the ice cream truck down the road, basically. That was like my version of running. And I was recruited by some stranger in a grocery store who saw my cane and was like, hey, you're blind. You should go join this group. And so I joined in the Central Park, had no idea what to expect, ran my first 4 miles that day. With Kevin, who's, I don't know if Kevin's here. He's here if he's supporting. But and I couldn't walk for like a whole week after that because it was the first time running 4 miles, and it was the best. And I've started running ever since. 6 years later, here we are.
That is incredible. I would not recommend listening to strangers and just showing up to places they tell you to, but I'm sure Kevin was very trustworthy. Sarah, let's hear about your first experience running. Yeah.
The best ever. the best ever. I ran about, this will be my 12th Hope and Possibility race. And so it's like I've been running 12 years so far, and I do all the races. So
That is incredible,
She
Sarah.
has the medals to prove it.
yeah. And Achilles is the best. And I like to sing when I run, and I do triathlons too, and I like to sing when I bike ride and swim. I sing,
I can confirm that.
and so it just makes me very happy. Thanks.
That is incredible. I did hear, folks did tell me that you love to sing, doing everything. So the singing and swimming part is very interesting to me, actually. So that was the experience that we got from our athletes. So let's hear from our guides. So Wesley, what was your first, how did you get involved and become a guide?
Great question. So I was traveling in 2011. I was in Columbus, Ohio. There was a similar group that I was able to run with. I came to New York. They did not have a chapter in New York City, but I did see all the yellow shirts. So I was able to flag somebody down one time while I was running, asked about the group. They gave me a little bit of information, told me about Saturday mornings and Tuesday nights, and I've been coming since.
That is pretty incredible. And is it the same yellow shirts?
Yes,
since then?
these are the shirts. They're hard to miss.
They are hard to miss.
Yeah, he's literally wearing the same shirt from 2011. That's why,
Same one.
it is. That's all he has.
The joke tonight is actually I was asked to wear the shirt and forgot it. So Franny did have an extra one for me. Thank you.
That is wonderful. That's the downside of sitting on a panel with your friend, that they get to pick on you and they get to tell people things that they shouldn't. But this is wonderful. And then, Terrell, would you like to share your first experience running as a guide?
Yeah, well, so I've been running for 40-some years, a really, really long time. Not fast, I'm slow, but I can do the distance, and so I've just had a long career. It's just a passion that I have for running. I was working for Cigna at the time. Cigna's a very big sponsor and partner of Achilles. And so I got involved there. And I remember I was living in Philadelphia. It was probably 2012. And my husband, who's here as well, he was there also. And we decided to go try and run with Achilles in Philly. And I was worried, like, what if I get left behind? What if I can't keep up? And so all the things that make you a little bit nervous about it. But never looked back. Never, ever looked back. I think the friends that we've made here and the different people that we've had the privilege to run with over the years has just kept me running. So it's fantastic.
That is incredible. Thank you, Terrell. So let's get some layman's definitions, I guess you can say. What does it actually mean to be a guide runner? Francesco, can you share that with us?
Yeah, as an athlete, I'm perfectly willing to explain the guide situation. So, we have athletes with all different disabilities. You want me to go into athletes too?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so all different disabilities, basically any categorized disability, right? People who are blind like myself, with brain injuries, amputees, spinal cord injuries, learning disabilities, literally everything. And they're paired with volunteer guide and support runners, which is where Terrell and Wes come in. And it's basically to facilitate the run, walk, or roll in whatever way that we need. So if someone's running with me, someone has the big misfortune of running with me, like someone did last week, you'd be holding a tether to give me tactile feedback because I'm blind. If you're running with someone, who has a TBI, they might have balance issues. So the guide might provide someone, like going around turns, providing some balance assistance. Like every athlete is different, just like every runner is different. But the volunteer and the guide is there to facilitate whatever it is that the athlete needs.
Thank you. Thank you for that description. And Terrell, can you share with us? So sometimes folks will use the term support runner. Is that the same as a guide?
I think it is. I think everything that Francesco said, and I do think that it really matters. How you support one athlete can be very, very different from how you support another. And what I found over the years, having run with so many people, is the best thing to do is ask and just to be curious about what works for them. I've run with a lot of visually impaired runners, and I found that it can differ. People's preference it differs in terms of even what you say, kind of the direction that you give. Some people will say, I don't really need that much direction. I can follow along, and others will want a lot more kind of a visual description while you're running. So I think in every way it's a support. I would also say it's a joint support, right? I mean, when you're running a marathon, anybody might need support during that, and I think the athletes, through their energy, through their passion, just provide immense support to their guides as well.
Thank you, Terrell. So the guide-athlete relationship, because it is a relationship, right? It can seem like a sort of matchmaking. So I'm going to switch off on asking this question, but how has interacting with guides, for the runners here, how has interacting with guides you've run with added to your life in general? Positively. Francesca.
You want me to go? Yeah. Guides are interesting, right? Because there's they're humans, right? And so everyone's different. You have the whole gambit of guides. Like Wes and Terrell, completely different people. Complete pleasure to run with both of them. But it's really cool because you get when what other situations in life are you literally tied to somebody for miles, just conversing? They see you at your best at mile 1 of a marathon. They see you at your worst when I'm just completely done at mile 24 of a marathon. It's such a transparent lens to see another person. And that's why it's so cool to run with different people, because you just get to interact with such a wide, diverse group of folks.
Thank you, Francesco. And Sarah, what has your experience, how has running with a guide added to your life experiences?
The guides are the nicest people ever. I'm just the luckiest person. I get to meet people to run with all the time. So I'm very lucky.
That's awesome. So for our guides here, so if you can think back, it might be a while ago. Can you think back to the first time that you ran as a guide and share with us what that experience was like? The positives, the not so positives, whatever you can recall that might be beneficial for the crowd here. We will go with you, Wesley, first.
Sure. Tough to remember the actual first time, but I will say one of the neat things that has been about Achilles is I know in the beginning I was a little nervous. It was just kind of not knowing what you don't know. You also have this over sense of responsibility, of course. You want to do it right. You have somebody that's dependent on you. One of the most beautiful things that has come out of it, though, is it's really not hard, and it's so enjoyable. And it's actually, you heard from Francesco and from Sarah about, what guides have benefited in their lives. But truly, like for most of the guides that I know, it's the athletes and what they've done for us in our lives. So it's been a beautiful relationship that's evolved.
Thank you. And Terrell?
Yeah, I do remember actually the first person who I ran with, and it's a family from Philadelphia. Chris Lynch is blind. His son is blind, and his wife is sighted, and they've become some of our very best friends. But I remember running with Chris, and the first time I ran, I wasn't tethered. I ran with someone else just to sort of experience that, and I think probably for a couple of times. And then I learned my way through it. I remember one time saying to Chris, watch out. And he's like, okay, like, is there something coming at my head? Am I going to trip on, like, you got to be a little more descriptive here. And so you really do learn, it is a learned experience in terms of how to be the best guide. And every experience is a different experience.
Thank you, Terrell. And that it is interesting running the first time with somebody. So for the folks here, Francesco did a quick little crash course for a couple of colleagues of mine and I last week, since I was going to be moderating this panel. And it was quite an experience because you can't just say watch out, right? And you can't just be yanking people around. So for those who have not run as a guide or tried it out, I would highly, highly recommend it. Maybe don't run with Francesco because he will pull your leg. Maybe not
I did offer to let go of the tether in the middle just to freak you out a little bit. I will say, for anyone who's nervous to get involved, we do have a new guide orientation before anybody is actually paired with other athletes. So there is an actual orientation and a training session for anybody new signing up where they learn all the different disabilities and how to guide just generally. So kind of a version of what we did last week. So, if you're worried about being thrown into the deep end, just here's a random athlete, go run. That's not how it works. So you don't have to worry about that.
Thanks, Francesco. So depending on, regardless of if you're running with a guide for the first time or if you run with a guide multiple times, there is a level of trust that has to be built up between the runner and the guide, right? Share some thoughts on what some of your experiences have been on having to rely on another person, whether that's in practices or more so, I would say, during races, because you are an elite para-triathlete, right, Francesco?
So they tell me. It's interesting because whenever you enter a race situation, right, you're not only dealing with yourself and your guide, right? If I'm doing a chill run, for the most part, it's my guide and I and, obstacles, potholes, tree branches, things like that. The moment you enter a race scenario, first of all the stress goes up, right? We're going for a goal or performance or whatever it is. There are a lot of other people who are racing aren't necessarily looking out, so they might cut you off. They're trying to get water at an aid station and they'll just kind of cut in front of you. And so there's a lot of other variables that get into it. So the stress is a lot higher, which puts a lot more pressure on the guides. And so that relationship is so much more important while racing or in any sort of stressful situation, because not only is the guide, responsible for the safety of the athlete, but they're also responsible for, whatever performance goals that the athlete might have, if that is, the case. So it's interesting. And I've done races with guides that I've known for years. I mean, I've done races with Wes, obviously, and we may have known each other for a few minutes. Obviously, we've known for quite a few years, but I've also done races where the race is on Sunday and I've flown in on Saturday afternoon and I'm meeting my guide for the first time. And we're literally practicing in the parking lot before the race. And so we do it, but that contrast is very interesting because I'm never really at ease, right? If I don't trust the guide versus if I race with Wes, we could be doing a cross country, a trek under branches and jumping over rivers. And I'm not really stressed because, whatever, it'll happen. So yeah, it's cool.
Okay. Thank you for sharing those experiences, Francesco. Sarah, I know you think guides are the best people in the world, but how do you feel about having to rely on somebody else when you're running or when you're participating in races?
As long as they can sing, we get along. The ones who stay quieter, they're harder to run with.
So you have to, on the
Sing.
application, you have to say you can sing in order to run with Sarah, okay?
I will say it's a really good point. It's cute, but some of the things we've talked about is very foundational, being able to help out the athletes for what they need. But then it kind of evolves into someone needing singing. It becomes fun. Some of the fun stuff too is watching Francesco trying to put on my 3 sizes too small shoes in a triathlon, and me just thinking, I'm gonna let him figure this one out actually. So I definitely don't want to like, that's some of the really beautiful stuff that honestly like makes it worth it. And then afterwards, of course, like being there for an athlete, being able to help them finish a race. But those are like the fun things that really do come out of the races and the practices. And I definitely don't want to kind of skip over that for sure.
I think one other thing that I would add, often you're running with other guides, especially in races. There might be, and I've actually found that to be incredibly helpful when you're running, a long race that's crowded, to have at least 2 guides. And I think also it's how do you establish kind of a rapport with the other guide and talk to them about, where are you going to be? Where am I going to be? How are we going to do this? Switching off occasionally in terms of who's holding the tether. So I think that's another super important relationship.
Great point that you bring up there, Terrell. Can you actually explain to folks why there would be multiple guides in a race?
Yeah, for a lot of reasons. One, to get water. Somebody's got to get water when you're going through a water stop. But I do think just, especially people typically other people aren't always paying attention. And a lot of people actually have headsets in and things like that. So being able to navigate through all the things that are going on in a race requires sometimes a couple of people. And I also, if you're doing a marathon, I also think it's great because you never know. Something could happen to a guide and all of a sudden it's you. And, and so I think that's really helpful. But even just thinking about how you sort of surround an athlete, people sometimes won't see a tether and try to run straight through it. I just think having strategies for that is super helpful.
That's great. So now if you see multiple guides, that's the reason why. They're allowed to have, the runners are allowed to have more than one guide. So we've talked about a lot of the positives, right? And for the guides here, I know you've touched on this a little bit. And from my very, very short experience last week, I'm not going to say was it intimidating, because I can imagine it was, but can you talk about the fact that being a guide can be intimidating because you are in runners' eyes, their ears, you're sort of taking over, like in charge of their safety on the course. How does that experience translate for you? We'll go with you first, Terrell.
I don't know that ever goes away totally. When you're running and there's potholes and things like that, you feel, I think Wes used the word, responsible. You feel like you have a big responsibility for that. I think you get a little more comfortable with it the more races that you do, and especially to the point around having trust with the person that you're running with can really make a huge difference from that perspective. But it is about being alert. I will tell a story. I don't know that I should tell the story, but I actually had been running with one person for a long time, and I got so comfortable with him that we got to a water stop and I just dropped the tether and let him, and he walked straight into a tree. And I'm like, oh my gosh, so comfortable. So you do, especially when you know people really well, you have to pay attention. You have to be alert and on your best game so that someone doesn't walk into a tree.
Wes would do that too, but he would do it on purpose.
You're not wrong.
Me, specifically with me, to be clear.
Only with Francesco. He's hard to break. I've tried. I will say I was actually more surprised at how easy it became. So I was very nervous in the beginning. There's always that sense of responsibility, especially if you have an athlete that is, trying to PR, or I've run with Francesco in championship races or big long races like half Ironman. So you do have this heightened sense of responsibility for someone else so they can achieve their goals. But ultimately, anytime I have that nervous feeling, I always prove myself wrong, that it's way easier than I thought, and it's more about the rapport, and you're doing something with, I don't know, you kind of turn off a switch, you stop thinking about yourself because you're so focused on someone else, and it actually helps you through your own races. I found that.
Wesley, for folks here who might not know, or those watching online later, what is PR and how does that impact you being a guide?
Great question. Sorry about that. So a personal record, it might. So if Francesco is running a race and he wants to do a 5K in the best time that he's ever done, I want to be able to help him do that. And I have been in races where I'm like, oh, I don't know if I can keep up. So you have a little bit of that, but I've actually PR'd myself in races like that I wasn't even expecting. So that is a personal record. It's them doing the best race that they've actually done in that situation.
Thank you. Thank you for that explanation. We want to make sure everybody here, regardless of whatever their level of running or information might be, feels included here and online later. So I'm sure most folks do know what PR is, but just wanted to clarify. So we've talked about some personal experiences for the runners here, for the guides here. Now let's talk about what makes a good guide. Sarah, of course, Sarah's standards are that you must sing well. But is it a certain personality trait? Is it, does height make a difference? So Francesco, you are very tall compared to me. I'm 5 feet tall. I can imagine that makes a difference. So let's start with you, Francesco. What makes a good guide in your opinion?
Yeah, height's definitely, it's not a massive thing because one of my regular training partners is 5 feet tall. So that's totally cool. I've actually ridden a tandem bike with her too, and while we wouldn't do a road race, it's cool. We do Central Park loops pretty chill. I'd say they're all so honesty's big, right? Because the big thing for me is I want to feel like I am able to be raw during a race. If I'm giving it all out, but I'm also then worried about what my guide is thinking of me or having to present myself a certain way, I can't give it all, So I need to be able to be honest and just transparent. And if I don't feel comfortable with the guide, I can't do that. So my best race performances are with guides that I feel comfortable with. They need to be honest too, right? Two-way street. If there's something that I'm doing that is not working with my guide, they need to be able to tell me, right? It's not just the guide always listening to the athlete's preferences. It's a two-way street. Both people have to listen to each other for there to be, equality and zen. So yeah, that's a big one. Commitment is also big. More so, making plans and agreeing. For example, you don't have to run with someone every week. I have some guides that I literally race with once a year, and I don't ever see ever. Literally, I see them once a year just for a race. But it's that sort of sense of confidence that they're going to be there for me, and a lot of that has to do with commitment.
Awesome. And do you find that communicating that in the beginning is helpful, or is that just something that's developed over time?
Yeah, I think, so what I see, so Achilles, we have hundreds and hundreds of athletes with disabilities just in New York City. And the ones who tend to race more, I find, tend to have that conversation with their guides. And it's not, we have athletes who literally walk a marathon. It's not all people doing sub 230s or whatever. But in any case, right, there's that conversation of, hey, this is my goal. Can you do this for me? Cool. We're on the same page. Let's do it. So, yeah.
Okay. Thank you. And Sarah, is singing the only criteria you have for a guide to be a good guide, or is there some other criteria as well?
Telling jokes.
Yeah, telling jokes and running at my speed. Almost, yeah, and tell me to keep running and keep swimming and, pedal. But I pedal pretty good on the bike. And so just encouragement.
Encouragement and entertainment. That's a really nice combination. Yeah. Thank you, Sarah.
I think to Sarah's point, pace is important. Running, knowing that you can run the pace. I may have had an experience where that didn't go so well. But I would say it's one of the most important things is understanding, because it's easy for a guide to get out in front of an athlete a little bit, and and when they're not really, when they don't want that, or just making sure that you can run the pace like their PR, right? If they're going to PR, you want to know that you can keep up with them. So that matching is super important.
Yeah, and I think communication is key. Being able to, so there have been times where I will actually tell Francesco what my heart rate is at, just so he knows I'm redlining at this point.
I can tell.
It's when I stop telling jokes.
So this is a question for the guides, and you both have actually touched on these points quite a bit. But the runners have told us what makes a good guide in their minds. As a guide, what are some other additional roles that a guide would play on race day? Terrell, you actually alluded to some of this earlier, grabbing water. Are there other roles that the guides play, especially on race day?
Yeah, I think it depends. Again, it depends on the athlete in terms of what they're looking for, what they need. But it can be, getting somebody to the start line, after the start line, where are you going? I know we've talked a lot about things that are intimidating. It's really fun. It's really, really fun. And typically, afterwards, a lot of people will go out together after races. So you want to make sure that you are getting your athlete there. And it can be pre-planning, just in terms of making sure that you've got, like if it's a weekend thing, that you have all the plans together. But it really is down to the individual person, just like anybody, that you would be doing anything with on a weekend. You want to make sure that you've got things planned.
Awesome.
I just add, it's also a two-way street. I mean, I've been helped out a number of times in races where I'll check on somebody like, hey, how are you doing on nutrition? Do you need to drink water? But then I'll have the reverse where they're like, hey, do you have your race belt? And I'm like, oh shoot, yeah, I need to grab that. But yeah, so when you're getting ready for races in the beginning, do you have it just going through the checklist? It really is a partnership that I think helps both the athlete and the guide. I know I've benefited from it a number of times.
Awesome. So I just wanted to mention, I should have mentioned this in the beginning, I apologize. We will be taking questions. So we're going to speak with our guides and our runners and athletes for just a few more minutes, and then we'll start taking questions in a little while. For our runners, so there may be folks here who have never been a guide runner, and they may be considering it because you all have made this sound so fun and so exciting. And the fact that, people can run at different paces, they don't have to necessarily run in races, they can do practice runs. There's so many options available. So can you provide some suggestions for somebody who may want to become a guide runner and who might want to do this, obviously, for the first time? And Francesca, we'll go with you first.
Sign up. That seems to be the obvious first choice. It seems really big. It's, whatever, what we've been talking about. It seems big, but it's really not. You sign up. It takes like 2 seconds. AchillesInternational.org. Yes, I'm plugging this. AchillesInternational.org. It's free to sign up. And you make yourself an account, and there's an orientation session. So, literally, worst case, you show up. You talk to me for 20 minutes, which is, something no one has to do. But it's the hardest part of all of it. You talk to me, we go through a little guide training session, you get some tethering practice, you literally get taught exactly what you need to do so that there's no stress, there's no guesswork. It's really easy. And then after that, you get to run with awesome people like Sarah at all of our workouts. You get to meet other people. It's that human connection, right? We're all here for sport, we come for the sport, we stay for the community, and this is what we're all about.
That was an awesome plug for Achilles and for guide running, I'm just going to say. Achilles should record that and use it in those Instagram reels.
# shorts.
Shorts, there you go. Sarah, do you have any suggestions for anybody who wants to be a guide runner for the first time?
I just think it's the best thing in the world. I would just said show up, sign up, but show up, and it's just more fun than anything.
More fun than anything. That's a great hashtag. Showing up is one of the most important things you can do, right? Because if you don't show up, nothing happens after that. So you got to show up. For our guides here. And this might be tough because you may have many memories. Do you have a favorite memory that you'd like to share with the crowd here? A favorite medal or race memory as a guide? No pressure at all from Francesco, Wesley.
Mine's definitely guiding Sarah. So two short funny stories. I have guided both Sarah and Francesco. Sarah, I guided in the Montauk Triathlon. Sarah did swim and sing, and I did have to remind her she needs to do more swimming than singing. And she also stopped and talked to the cute lifeguard on the paddleboard, and I had to remind her again to keep swimming. So that might be my favorite Sarah moment. I have a lot of Franny moments. I think Francesco's was on a Wednesday night. We decided to do a half Ironman in Victoria, Canada that weekend. So we were having a conversation. We were going to go cheer on a friend, and then we decided, well, why don't we do it? If we were to do it, we'd have to fly out, shoot the next day. Well, why don't we look up at flights? And we did that, and then we realized it was possible. In Franny's famous words, he used my own words against me. He said, oh, it'll be a great story and it'll be an adventure, which I say all the time. And I was like, all right, you got me, let's do it. So we flew out the very next day after that night, and we ended up completing this ginormous race, which was my biggest race by far at that point, and it was a lot of fun. So those are my two probably favorite memories, and I could go on all night with those.
One of the best, yeah, if you show up to if you make the mistake of showing up to a Tuesday evening Achilles workout, you might be drafted by me to fly internationally the next day to do a half Ironman, sleep overnight in an airport, like everything. So you should all come, and then we'll do a race.
So it's not special treatment for Wesley alone. Terrell, do you have a favorite memory that you'd like to share with us?
Sarah as well. Yeah, I don't remember singing, so maybe that's why I didn't get asked back. I'm not sure. But no, I think the one race that I did where it's like I always knew how incredibly, just how incredible Achilles was. But I was in Disney and I was running what is called the Dopey Challenge, where you run 5K on Thursday, 10K on Friday, half marathon on Saturday, and a marathon on Sunday. And for the 10K and for the marathon, I was paired with somebody, people from Achilles may know Cedric King, double amputee, just such a great, fun person to run with. And so ran the 10K with him and then came back and ran the marathon with him. And it's the story that always gets me the most choked up. I remember coming into Epcot at the end of that marathon. And, firstly, everyone, what's so just rewarding about running with Achilles is no matter where you are, people stop you on a course. They see those bright yellow shirts. They want to know what you're doing. They want to understand it. And in this case, this woman turned around, and we were at the very, very end, and turned around, and she had tears in her eyes, and she looked at Cedric, and she said, I have seen you on this course for the last 4 days. And she's like, she was a nurse, and she said, I am so emotional. And she literally was just sobbing. And it just really was the story of, what that achievement's like and how it impacts so many people. I think Wes used the word community, and that is what it is. And to get to experience that in every race is just phenomenal.
That is incredible. Thank you for sharing. Francesco, I did want to mention that both Terrell and Wesley talked about a great running experience with Sarah. And you, but also Sarah.
Mostly Sarah.
Mostly Sarah.
If you want a fun run, you go to Sarah. That's what you do.
Because Sarah will make you sing, but Francesco will pull your leg, as I said. So, you choose who you're going to run with.
I do have to give a shout out to Mauricio in the audience. He's another crowd pleaser. He had one of the more powerful lines, and we finished the New York City Triathlon, and I'll try not to get choked up. I remember saying, amazing job, you did great, all that sort of stuff, and he's like, oh, I never would have experienced that if you weren't here. And I remember that just hit me so hard. I was like, oh man, that never would have happened with it. So I did have to give it, that is one of my favorite stories. Not as funny, but definitely impactful.
Thank you, Wesley, for sharing that, because I know we've made this very lighthearted and we've tried to have this be conversational and some more storytelling. But I think the role of the guide is so important, right? And I hope that after today, for those who are not guide runners, that would be their takeaway, and that you not only sign up yourself, you sign up your family and friends, right? Going to get more people to sign up as guide runners. So I'm just going to ask one more question to Francesco, but we're going to take questions from the audience. If you have a question, please raise your hand, and my colleague Mark Guillaume will come around with the mic in a minute, and we'll get a question from you. So before we move on to that, just one last question for you from me, Francesco, is what's the safest way to guide an athlete who has low vision or is blind? I know you've touched on this briefly, but in regards to using a tether or another object to connect, and I know I had these questions as well. Does everybody use a tether? Like, what is the process?
Well, the safest way to guide any athlete is to show up to orientation with me and learn. But I would say the biggest, if you got to remember something, it's to get used to speaking out loud what you would normally be thinking in your head. So most people, as you're running, you're mentally cataloging, right? Pothole there, little barrier there, people there. But most people aren't used to calling it out because that'd be weird. But when you're guide running, that's basically what you need to do. You're calling out everything that you normally would notice just out loud so that your athlete can figure out what it is. That's mainly it. If you're blind or low vision, yeah, you use a tether. It could be like a shoelace, a lanyard, an actual tether with rope. Yeah.
Hi. Thank you so much for such an informative and moving panel discussion. I had a question about the guide athlete pairing process. So how does that occur? And do you, if it's a relationship that works very well for both the guide and the athlete, can you continue running with the same athlete for multiple races and runs? And what is that whole process like?
Yeah. So that's a great question. So as much fun as it is to run as an Achilles athlete, right? I also work at Achilles. I lead a lot of workouts.
And that's fun too.
Which is also
Right?
the most fun. And so when people sign up for workouts, whether they're athletes or guides, especially if you sign up for the Manhattan ones, I actually do all of the pairings manually, and it's based on a few factors. There's more quantitative factors, what pace do you want to do, what's your preferred distance, things like that, right? Where it's like hard stops, where if if your max pace is a 10-minute pace and an athlete wants to do a 7-minute pace, like that won't be a match. But then beyond that, we match people based on personality, preferences, just overall what kind of interest they might have. Maybe an athlete really likes talking about Marvel movies, so I'll pair them with someone who really loves Marvel movies. So it goes a lot deeper than just what's your pace and distance, but that's where it starts. And then in terms of racing, once you come out and you start running with athletes, if you people jive, they get in a good groove, you can definitely keep running with the same people, and that's actually how a lot of people become long-term guide and athlete pairs. That's how Wes and I actually started running, where we were paired together completely randomly for a race, and then we figured we could kind of tolerate each other, and so we just kind of kept running together, and here we are.
I would just add, be very, very, very honest with what you are looking for, and also conservative. Because even if you feel you can run a 9-minute pace or a 10-minute pace, the athlete might be having their best day. Yeah, so it might, you don't want to take that from them. So I'd be very conservative just to make sure that, and honest also with your pace and all that.
One last thing to add, 20% of Achilles athletes, I would say, walk. So you don't have to be a runner, right? And you could even if you are a runner and you're kind of nervous, maybe sign up to walk the first day.
I think also as a guide, to that point, Francesco, I think sometimes you need to walk, even if you're a runner, if you're a guide. There are more people who are there walking and they're looking for someone, it really is about how do you support, back to the word support, how do you support the athlete?
Okay, I'm glad you mentioned triathlons. Running is simple, right? But with the triathlon, there's so many more logistical components. In your experience, New York Runners does a great job accommodating Achilles, I think, in its events. In your experience, are organizers of triathlons as well set up to accommodate the kinds of athletes you work with? Because there's a lot, right? Transition is very complex. So in your experience, if you could share some thoughts.
Yeah, I'd say like most organizations, some are better than others. I would say that. I don't think I've had a bad experience where it was just the worst. Like it was absolutely, but so some transitions can be tighter, harder to navigate. So I wouldn't depend on the organization necessarily to have everything figured out, but it's also, kind of connecting. A lot of times once I'm coming into transition and we're setting up, I'll ask a lot of questions just to make sure, hey, do we have a clear path out? Do they actually have a para, rack for the bikes, that it's close to the front, different accommodations like that. And a lot of times it actually helps organizations that might not have thought of it. So the short answer to your question is sometimes it's amazing. Like they've thought through most of it. I'm thinking of Boston too. Yeah. They haven't thought it. They're trying to do better at it, and but nobody's been terrible. Did that help answer? Or yeah.
I would say two quick things. So para, for those who don't know, para refers to people with disability. So para divisions in races are, the athlete with disability. AWD is also the acronym for races. Another part, so Achilles, right? We pair guides and athletes. We do all that stuff. It's awesome. Another part of Achilles is that advocacy part, right? Where a lot of small town triathlon organizations or running organizations in general, they have no idea sometimes how to deal with a person with a disability. And it's not because they don't want to, it's just they just don't have experience. And so a large part about Achilles is advocating for athletes, just advocating for needs, what the standards are. And we go all the way from community organization up to Ironman on the triathlon side, and obviously large organizations like Roadrunners on the running side.
Go Achilles. This is Valerie Hartman. I have a quick question. Can you talk about the time commitment? And I know it's Tuesdays and Saturdays here in New York, but do you have to sign up and sort of give a pint of blood for 3 months, or can you come and go? How does it work as far as volunteering?
Yeah. So this year, actually, as of a couple of weeks ago, we now have workouts every single day of the week in New York City, somewhere in the city. And you can see all of that on the website, achillesinternational.org/NYC. You can literally come one workout a year if you want to. You can come all 7 days a week, 52 weeks out of the year. Like we're there blizzarding, we're there like burning summer, we're there all the time. So if your schedule allows for 7 days a week, we'd love to have you. Sarah would love to have you, especially if you'd sing. If you can only come once a year on our reindeer run in December and you dress up with reindeer antlers, that's totally fine too.
Hi, it's Karen. Is this just an adult program, or do you have a kids program for Achilles?
Great question.
Okay, all right. I don't want to hog the mic. We have people all ages. So if you're 8 years old and you can join our kids program, you can be 88. Same for volunteers, same for athletes, like anybody. I can't think of a single qualifier that would exclude you from joining Achilles in some capacity.
Yeah, it should be mentioned that Achilles has a number of different chapters, or not chapters, I'm sorry, pillars. Well, I was going to mention you have Achilles Kids, specifically for children that dedicated to that. You also have the Freedom Team, which I'm looking at Emily. I'm making sure I'm getting my talking points right. You have the Freedom Team, which have veterans of disabilities. So you have these different sects that you have specialized, if that helps. Great question, though.
As far as doing the races, do you need to sign up separately for a race that you're interested in guiding? Or is it that you would say you're interested in running with an athlete and then you go through Achilles? And a follow-up question to that is, do you recommend starting with like shorter races before you do a long race? Or if you're somebody who already does long races, can you just jump right into doing like a half marathon or something like that?
So the guide registration differs from organization to organization. So when in doubt, you can ask us, and we'll basically tell you however way each organization handles it. Roadrunners has an athlete with disability team that handles AWD guide registrations. But obviously there's a ton of different races that we participate in, so it's all different. In terms of where to start, I'd say it's kind of up to you. I mean, I've had plenty of guides who first time they're guiding was a marathon. Now, like if you're kind of wary about that, then yes, there's nothing wrong with starting with guiding 5Ks. But theoretically, if you're guiding at workouts week after week, I would just jump in wherever you and your athlete feels comfortable.
How's it going? Thank you for this description. Bald guy, red jacket, unruly beard, but amazing beard. Thank you for this. I'm the founder of an inclusive running group. We're based in Central Park. We run some of the same times as you, I think. Saturdays, 10 a.m. I've volunteered with Achilles through New York Cares before. My question is, how do we support you, even for people who aren't going to get involved with Achilles? I see you in the park, and obviously I volunteered before. Just the awareness and the knowledge for other people in the park, I think, is great, being good citizen stewards. So what are the opportunities on an individual level and at a community level, like other running groups, to help out?
So a few things. Cheer us on. So one of the best things about New York City, especially, is when you're running through the park, people recognize Achilles, and being a runner yourself, just getting those cheers, but those really specific cheers of Go Achilles, and it just brings a smile to your face. So I would first start with that. Secondly, I would say spread the word. There's a number of running groups out there. A lot of them actually do community type of activities. This is just kind of a no-brainer. Like, you want to do something in the community and volunteer, and you're already running as a group, great. Maybe recommend coming out one Tuesday, as a group to come out and spread the word that way.
Anyhow, can you guys hear me? Yes. First of all, as a deaf person, by the way, I have red hair. I'm kind of an old lady, about the same age as you probably. Yeah. Well, whatever. Just a blah. As a deaf person, I hate going to disability group things. I'm one of probably a leading lawyer in this country on different kinds of rights. But the problem with a lot of disability groups, and maybe tonight you've helped me convince me this is a great thing, but the most important thing about any time you work with any DA, disabled person, I just want to help another human being. And I want to tell you how I got involved. Is a friend of mine who's a deafblind runner was running in the marathon last year. She got assigned she wanted to run it at 9-minute miles. The person who she was assigned to said, "No way in hell I can run 9-minute miles. That's not what you put down on your time." So she asked me to come and help, and you guys were kind on New York Road Runners, and I showed up and I said, "I'm not running that fast." I ended up running with a deaf-blind woman from London. And we had the best time. I could not speak for 4 days. But the thing is, I had the word grace printed on the back of my shirt because I just recovered from an illness, and I was very grateful. Actually, the word was grateful on the back of my shirt. So she's blind. She's telling me every song, but every time a runner passed us and said grateful, she told me. And it was a crazy experience. So I just want to say thank you for what you're doing. And anybody else, everybody who joins here should just remember we're all equal.
Thank you so much. That was an incredible story. Thank you so much for sharing with us. And yes, everybody should be treated as an individual that they are. But we do hope that this encourages people to get involved and help provide those opportunities to folks that can then run these races and triathlons if they so want to. Francesco is the one who's going to encourage you to do that. But thank you again for sharing your story. We are almost at time, folks, so unless we have one last question, we'll close out the evening. Oh, one last question.
This is the logistical question. My husband, Buddy, and Buddy and Holly Young, we've signed up. We're ready to go, but I'm not exactly sure which comes first. Do we sign up for an orientation or then come up to a Tuesday or a Sunday or a Saturday race? Can you just give us the definitive answer of what comes next?
Yep. So just for everyone to know, basic timeline on the website, right? There's an application form. You fill that out. Once that goes in and submitted and clears, you then sign up for an orientation. And so here in Manhattan, we meet Tuesday evenings and Saturday mornings in Central Park, East 90th, 5th Avenue, Engineers Gate, 6 p.m. Tuesdays, 9:30 a.m. Saturdays. We have guide orientations basically every workout. And so you sign up for one of those slots, you show up. I most likely will be there doing the actual guide training. And so you'll run with me, you'll have to listen to me talk for like 10 minutes, and then we'll do a little tether jog. And then you'll be free to sign up. Your account will be unlocked, and you'll be able to sign up for any of our workouts 7 days a week around the city, around the country, Tokyo, Mongolia, Norway, like literally everywhere you go on vacation, you cannot escape Achilles. We are always there, just ready for your volunteerism.
Just keep running no matter where you go. How many folks here are going to be at this Sunday's race? Can I get a show of hands? Oh, okay. Yay. So now tap the person next to you who didn't raise their hand and be like, why aren't you there? Folks, I just want to give a huge round of applause to our panelists, Terrell, Sarah, Wesley, Francesco. Thank you so very much to the Achilles International team. Thank you to our partners, TD Bank, for the race. And again, this is the Achilles Hope and Possibility 4-miler, Sunday, June 25th, 8:15 a.m. If you're not running, I hope you're out in the park cheering folks on. I also want to give a huge shout out to my colleague, Mark Guillaume, who is Mark is New York Roadrunners Director of Disability Inclusion and Accessibility. If you have any questions, you can email accessibility@nyrr.org. I also want to give a shout out to my colleagues from our Strategic Partnerships team, Kylene Witt, Jamie Grapper, and Maya Fitzstevens. I want to give a shout out to AJ back there, who is making sure this recording goes well. And then also our Run Center staff here at the Run Center. Thank you again, folks. And if everybody would not mind, let's get a selfie. Thank you so much, everyone. Hold on to your seats just for a second.